There we go. So let's go ahead and move forward to general reminders. So a few things I encourage all students to do. This is aside from summer aid, but just things I want everybody to know and to regularly do is to check your LionPath account. I know sometimes students are only checking LionPath when it's time to schedule classes, but there may be some important holds or to-do list items. Our office is sending out communications via email. I know sometimes students don't see those emails. They're all stored in the communication center in LionPath. And you always want to make sure you're checking your account balance as well. Regarding that, as a reminder, students who do currently have an account balance for the spring semester, there is still time to secure additional aid. And so if you have a balance and you're not sure what to do with it, there is still time to secure additional aid. You want to make sure you have that conversation with us before the semester ends. Students with unpaid balances will be canceled from future registration. So you either won't be able to register for the summer or next fall, or if you've been able to register and a balance has been generated since then, it's at risk of being canceled. So you want to make sure you're checking your spring balance before moving forward and looking ahead to the fall. Another reminder is to complete the 2024-2025 FAFSA. We're going to be talking through this presentation mostly about the 2023-2024 FAFSA. And so if you haven't filled this out yet or you haven't heard from our office yet, that's okay. I could do a whole other presentation on what's going on with that. So I'm going to try not to get into that. The recommended filing deadline for continuing students is April 15th, and you should have your financial aid offers by late June or early July. Before we get into some of the details of the financial aid here, a few assumptions I wanted to meet. I'm assuming folks in this room are undergraduate students. If you're a graduate student, you may be eligible for financial aid this summer. Things are a bit simpler and a bit different. And so if you're a graduate student, you can log off or exit your browser if you're watching the recording and contact our office for questions. We're assuming you're a continuing student. So very similarly, prospective first-year students coming into Penn State for the first time, they're eligible for some sources of aid over the summer, but this presentation is geared towards continuing students, so students who have already been taking classwork at Penn State. And we're assuming you're FAFSA eligible. So either you've submitted the FAFSA or you're planning to submit the FAFSA. If you're an international student or not eligible to complete the FAFSA, again, we can have that conversation with a representative from our office, but that's going to not really be included in this presentation. So let's go ahead and keep going. What's different about summer? Summer is the tail end of the 23-24 academic year. Because of that, aid availability is not automatic. So some students are using the full eligibility of their aid sources during the fall and spring. And because summer's still part of that same academic year, some folks run into issues. There are different sessions in the summer. As we all know, in the fall, there's the 16-week schedule plus fall break. In the spring, there's the 16-week schedule plus spring break. In the summer, there are 4 different sessions your classes may be scheduled for. There's the regular session, Maymester, summer session 1, or summer session 2. All those different sessions make it so that everybody's working on different timelines. Because of that, some things have to be standardized. We'll get into that when we talk about dates and calendars, but there's a lot of different things to consider of when your classes actually are. Your classes may be taking place on a completely different timeline as somebody else in this meeting. Students can take courses at any Penn State campus. And so typically, if you were to change campuses throughout the academic year, you have to get special permission through your academic advisor to change campus. But during the summer, all 20 campuses you're eligible to take classes through. So let's go ahead and talk about billing next. We want to know the baseline of what things are going to cost us before we talk about financial aid. So for the summer, you're billed on a per credit basis up to 12 credits. If you're above 12 credits, just like in the fall and spring, you're being billed at the full-time course load. And so some folks may be expecting to take 12 or more credits over the summer. In my experience, most undergraduate students are taking fewer than 12 credits. And so you're going to be billed at that part-time basis. And I'll get more into that on the next couple of slides. If you're taking more than 12 credits, the cost of tuition will be based on the first 12 credits scheduled. So if you're taking 15, 16, 17 credits, then you're going to want to maybe strategically choose which 12 credits you schedule first. And of course, cost is dependent on these criteria. And so an in-state student versus an out-of-state student, which Penn State campus you're taking it at, if you are above or below 60 credits, and depending on your program. And like I said, I'll get into that on the next slide. So I want everybody to take down this website. And one of the benefits of having a virtual meeting or a recorded meeting is you all are welcome to pull this up on your phones or open up another tab on your browser as I'm doing this. So tuition.psu.edu, you're going to want to click on that tuition schedules button, the tuition schedules button, the first blue button that you see there. And there you can select the criteria that you see, whether you're a Pennsylvania or non-Pennsylvania resident. For the sake of this presentation, you're going to want to hit summer 2024 and then select your location. You might want to start with your default campus, whether that's University Park or somewhere else, and then you can explore what some of the other locations would look like. So again, that's tuition.psu.edu for anybody following along. I went ahead and pulled up what this page looks like at University Park. I know this confuses some folks, so I'm going to break it down a little bit here. So lower division, that includes first and second year students up until 60 credits. And so if you're coming with transfer or AP credits, you might reach those before the second year, but that's what's considered to be a freshman and sophomore. You could see for both the Pennsylvania and non-Pennsylvania rates, that's a flat rate for folks in that lower division category. Once we get up to the upper division category, the cost is dependent on your program. And so I want everybody to be looking at this right now, whether you're taking classes at University Park or not. The page looks like this, but with different numbers for each of the campuses. So I want you to recognize right now, are you upper division or lower division? And if you're upper division, are you in one of these special programs, science, IST, EMS, business engineering, nursing, or are you in an all other program? So that would be something like liberal arts, education, anything that's not listed specially. So this is what that page looks like for University Park. And like I said, if you pull up any other campus, you're going to get the same page with different numbers. And so just as an example, you could see those cost breakdowns here for University Park, the Commonwealth campuses, and for World Campus. Different Commonwealth campuses cost different amounts, so that's not the same price for all of them, but you can see the range from low to high for PA residents and non-residents at all of these. So like I mentioned on the previous slide, you can take classes at other places. So if you're currently attending University Park, for instance, you can stay here over the summer and continue to take classes. You can go live at home, save some money on rent potentially, live with your parents and take one at one of your local campuses if you're from Pennsylvania. Or maybe you could take one online through World Campus, or maybe you could take one online through one of our Commonwealth campuses. I'm sure you all know, since 2020, many courses have been offered in web, even though they're technically at the campus. So that might be the case. So as you're exploring which classes to take, you want to see if they're offered at University Park, one of the Commonwealth campuses, or World Campus, because they all have different costs associated. And when talking about aid, sometimes the best way to finance is by reducing that baseline cost. It can sometimes be more effective than getting more aid later on. All right. I had some questions beforehand about special coursework, especially study abroad and internships. If offered through Penn State, you're eligible for aid for these types of study. There's an asterisk there because I'm going to go through the next part of the presentation, what you need to have criteria-wise to be eligible for any aid. And the same applies for study abroad and internships. And so if you're in a 3-credit study abroad experience versus a 12-credit study abroad experience, that might change what aid you're eligible for. But if you're studying abroad through Penn State, you can be eligible generally for aid. Same thing with internships. A 1-credit internship as a freshman versus a 12-credit internship as a senior, those are different credit-wise. And so your financial aid may depend on what your internship looks like. But if you're taking an internship that's a Penn State class, you're going to be eligible for the sources of aid I'm talking about. So next, what I want you all to do is take a look at your 23-24 financial aid award summary. Uh, like I said, if you're following along, you can pull this up in LionPath right now. The reason I want you all to pull this up is because the next several slides, I'm going to go through specific sources of aid. And it'd be nice for you to know if you've already received this source of aid and therefore can expect it in the summer, or if you're not receiving that aid and you can tune me out for the couple of seconds that I'm on that slide. Like I said, summer is the tail end of the academic year. And so whether whether we're using that information from the pre-existing FAFSA or whether you're looking for new aid, that's the year that we're using. So you'll see in mid-April, a new column will be added to that financial aid offer or award summary in mid-April with the summer line item. But for now, we want to estimate what those will be. And so for now, I want you, if you want to follow along, to follow the steps available here to pull up your financial aid award summary, or what it will newly be called, for those of you following along closely with the FAFSA changes, the financial aid offer. So if you're on your line path, you can click on My Finances in the top right corner, and then Financial Aid on the left side menu. The example here we have on our tutorials from the 2020 aid year. You'll all want to click on 2024 aid year to get you to the 23-24 aid year. That's a lot of years aid 2020 mentions I'm talking about. I'm trying to delay so you all can pull it up. And if folks are watching on the recording, sorry, I'm trying to do this live for the other folks. All right, so as you're pulling that up, if you need to take a quick picture of this with your phone before I go to the next slide, you're more than welcome to. But as you pull that up, I'm going to bring up what you're going to want to look for. And then I'm going to go aid source by aid source and talk about the criteria you need to be eligible. So I want you to look at your financial aid award summary and see if you have these different sources of aid. If you do, you want to make note of it because I'm going to talk about each of these different sources of aid. This is the part of the presentation that gets pretty information heavy, so I'm sorry about that. Sometimes I like the presentations to be a little bit more theoretical or philosophical, but here we have to go through some nuts and bolts. And so it'll be a lot easier if you know which sources of aid you're getting rather than me overwhelming you with 10 different sources of aid when only 2 or 3 may apply to you. All right. And this is the part of the presentation I may be expecting questions in the chat, so just don't be afraid to use the chat if you have any questions. So we're going to start with scholarships. Scholarships or grants offered by Penn State are for the fall, spring only. So if you're seeing things on your financial aid award summary like Bunton Waller Scholarship, Trustee Scholarship, Raise Me Scholarship, those types of keywords, most likely that's going to be for the fall, spring only. If you see the word Penn State anywhere in that, it's likely going to be for the fall, spring only, and you won't be eligible for that over the summer. So we're ripping off the Band-Aid and talking about the worst case scenario first here. If you're confused about who's offering the scholarship, you can click on the little question mark next to the aid source and it'll say who it's from. Maybe it'll be from our office through your academic college. It can vary, but generally those are only for the fall and spring. Outside scholarships are generally for the fall and spring only as well. Some of them are lenient. That's up to the scholarship provider. And so if you have an outside scholarship, I'd recommend you contact your scholarship provider to confirm your eligibility for the summer. Like I said, I would normally bet on not receiving it, but it's worth asking. Sometimes there's a total semester limit they'll provide, and so it's definitely worth asking your outside scholarship provider if that scholarship can carry through to the summer. I see a question about tuition discounts. That's a great question. Technically, the tuition discount, and for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, folks who have a parent who works for Penn State get a tuition discount. That discount, you're eligible for that regardless. That's a benefit that your parent has for working with the university. They can direct questions about that to HR. You are eligible for that over the summer. Next, we're going to talk about the federal Pell Grant. So students can receive up to 12 semesters of federal Pell Grant. So if you're expecting to graduate in less than 6 years and you're receiving federal Pell Grant, then you want to pay attention here. For summer Pell Grant, students must be enrolled in 6 or more credits. So we had a lot of questions come through on the RSVP form about what happens if I'm only in one class or 3 credits. You're going to see there's not many aid sources for you. So for Pell Grant, that's an example. You have to be in 6 or more credits. Funds are prorated based on the number of credits you're taking. And so if you've received federal Pell Grant, most likely the amount of financial aid that you have on your current award summary for fall and spring was for the full-time award. If you're in 6 credits, you could expect to receive half of that. If you're in 12 credits, you could expect to receive the same amount. Now, again, we'll make all of those official offers based on all of those eligibility details and asterisks and those sorts of things in mid-April. But if eligible, you'll see those funds pop up in mid-April. Again, assuming the FAFSA has been filed, you'll see those pop up on that award summary, and those will be applied automatically as long as you are enrolled. So that's the federal Pell Grant there. Next, we're going to talk about the PA State Grant. You would think they're both grants, so they have the same criteria, but they're from different funding sources, so that's not accurate. The PA State Grant, students can receive up to 8 semesters of the PA State Grant. Notice the Pell Grant was 12, so if you're planning to graduate in less than 6 years, you're normally good to receive the Pell Grant with no future issues. But the PA State Grant's only 8 semesters. So students can receive the half-time award in the summer if they're in 6 or more credits, or the full-time award if they're in 12 or more credits. There's some special circumstance where students doing Maymester are not eligible, but the other 3 summer sessions, if you're in 6 or more credits, you can be eligible for the half-time, or 12 or more credits, you can have the full-time. Students must apply to use the summer funds. So if you want to use the summer funds, if you're in 6 or more credits, you have to apply through FEA's website. That's PHEAA. And again, you want to see if you have the PA State Grant on your award summary already in order to do this. This is only for students who have received it in the past year. You would have to apply through FEA to be eligible for it. Now, one of the reasons you have to apply is this may restrict your future eligibility. So especially consider you're taking summer classes to catch up and you're still going to attend Penn State for 4 years plus this summer. If you use those state grant funds now, that counts as a semester. And so if you get to the spring semester of your 4th year, that technically would be your 9th semester, and you might lose out on the eligibility if you use it now. If you're in dire need of the funds, you can use it now and worry about it later. If you're thinking about graduating early, it could be a good way to use those funds as well. So a little bit there about the PA State Grant, and that acronym again is PHEAA. If you've received the PA State Grant, you've received communications from that agency most likely. Next, I want to talk about federal loans. So the subsidized and unsubsidized loans, these are the ones that students are offered directly from the government that are in their own names. Eligibility for these are limited. Students can use these funds in the summer if they're enrolled in 6 or more credits. So again, that's 3 for 3 here, where we're at 6 or more credits. If you're at 6 or more credits, you are eligible for these funds. However, most students have already exhausted their annual eligibility. So this is how much the government gives any one student for any one year. And like I mentioned, the summer is the tail end of the academic year. And so if you were offered $7,500 for 23-24 and used $7,500 in the fall and spring and you're a dependent student, technically you could use more funds for the summer, but you're already at your limit. So I want you to check on those loans, how much you've used over the fall and spring. Some students are in a fortunate position where they don't need them for the fall and spring and they'll decline them. And if that's the case, you can ask for us to reoffer those. Other folks use a portion of them. Other folks use them all. So you want to check there and see if you've accepted or declined your loans yet. If you have, you can contact us after April 15th to have your eligibility reoffered for the summer. So If you have declined your federal loans and didn't use them in the fall and spring and want to use them for the summer, you can contact us. If you've accepted them already, there's one other option I'm going to get to, but most likely your eligibility will be limited. This is the other area. Did you surpass one of these thresholds during the fall spring semesters? So either got past 29.1 or past 59.1 credits. You see those ranges under the first bullet point, 55 to 7,500 or 9,500 to 12,500. Those ranges are based on how many credits you've completed. So they'll give first year students 5,500 until they pass 29.1 credits. Then they'll give them 6,500. After they pass 59.1 credits, they'll give them 7,500. So if, say, you're a first year student this year and you got that 5,500, but after the spring semester, you'll be above 29.1 credits, you could be eligible for what we call a grade level increase, which would be an extra $1,000 to get you within that annual eligibility limit. All right. So I have on here to contact us after April 15th. That's because that's when awarding starts. If you're eligible for a grade level increase, we're going to have to wait actually until you finish those credits. And so after your April 15th and after your final grades are in and you've surpassed that. So if you've surpassed that after the fall semester, you can contact after April 15th. If you surpass that after the spring semester, you want to wait until your spring semester grades are in. So some folks, if you declined your loans or didn't use your full eligibility, you can ask to get those reinstated. If you're going to get to one of those grade levels, you can ask for that grade level increase. Most folks have used their full eligibility and won't be eligible for this. And if you want to use any of them, you need 6 or more credits in the summer. Next, we're talking about the federal direct Parent Plus loan. So again, check and see if you've used the Parent Plus loan. This is a federal loan for parents. Not all students are aware of what their parents are getting for them for aid. This is a federal loan for parents, and students can be eligible if they're a dependent student and enrolled in 6 or more credits in the summer. So you're getting the theme here. Federal aid is 6 or more credits. The amount of the loan can be up to your cost of attendance. So we get some students, they're not eligible for a single aid source that I've talked about so far, but they're in 6 or more credits and their parent can take out a loan for their whole summer education. If you're in less than 6, this is off the table, but 6 or more and your parent is eligible, they can apply for this Parent Plus loan. Now, this isn't automatic. If your parent used a plus loan in the fall and spring, they still have to apply and be approved for a Parent Plus loan. The application will be available via studentaid.gov after April 15th. So check if you have the Parent Plus loan, ask your parents if they plan on using that again, and if so, tell them they have to apply for a summer loan. There are also private loans. Now, this is one of the few aid sources where students can use if they're at less than 6 credits. Credit minimums are set by the individual letters. So you might find that one bank offers a private loan, but they require 6 or more credits. Another one may offer one for less than 6 credits. And so generally speaking, this is an aid source for folks who are less than half-time and an aid source for folks who are half-time or higher, but you want to check with the lender first. What's going to happen is you're going to apply through the lender, and then they're going to send us the application and ask us how many credits you're enrolled in. If their credit minimum is 6 and you're enrolled in 3, we're going to tell you you're not eligible for that loan. So if you're in less than 6 credits or even less than 12 credits, you want to make sure with the lender first that you're meeting their credit minimum. Very similarly, interest rates and approval criteria are set by individual lenders, so not everybody is getting approved for all of the loans or are getting a fair interest rate. Similar to the Parent Plus loan, the amount of the loan can be up to that cost of attendance, and applications will be available after April 15th. All right. So one of the aid sources that could be available for less than 6 credits, out of the ones we've talked about so far, this is the only one. There's also federal work study. Students must be enrolled in 6 or more credits because it's a federal aid source. They must have demonstrated financial need. Now, no student is going to be automatically awarded work study over the summer. Even if you've had work study in the fall and spring, nobody's automatically offered it over the summer, and opportunities are limited. So if you're interested in work study, you can contact us and we'll see if you're eligible and go through that process. There are also other employment opportunities. So sometimes folks think work study is all you get if you want to work, especially if you're going home to a closer campus in Pennsylvania. You can see if there are any on-campus jobs there. If you're staying at University Park, you can see if there's any on-campus jobs. And obviously, we don't care where you work. If you want to work somewhere off campus, if you want to work back at home at the place you worked at in high school, or you want to work for a paid internship that you're not getting college credit for, go work anywhere you'd like. Save up some money. This is only in regards to federal work study. There are a few additional sources I want to talk about. So what I mentioned so far should have covered everything on most folks' financial aid award summaries. Scholarships and grants from Penn State, outside scholarships, Pell Grant, all the things I just talked about. There are going to be some things you can apply for in addition. The first is the Summer Success Scholarship. The deadline for that is April 19th. That's offered through the Office of the Summer Session. And so you can Google this, the deadline's there. That requires that students have financial need and are taking class over the summer to catch up on their coursework. I saw a few folks on the RSVP form mention that they applied for this and never heard back. From my understanding, they don't make decisions until after the application deadline has passed. And so I would wait until after April 19th to hear back, to expect to hear back whether you're going to get this or not. Should still give you plenty of time to finalize or cancel your enrollment for the summer, but I wouldn't expect to hear back until after that application deadline to give everyone a fair shot to apply. There's Complete Penn State. This is a program through Penn State that's designed to offer students support completing their degree. In particular, they have a completion scholarship. That application is rolling. It's for folks within 30 credits of graduation, so you have to be close to that finish line, and are facing a financial barrier. That's left relatively vague, and so take that as you will. If you're within 30 credits and you consider this summer to be a financial barrier, you can apply for that. Of course, funding is not guaranteed. There are sometimes college level funds and what I'm calling experience-based funds. Like I mentioned, most colleges' financial aid offers are for the fall, spring only. But some colleges, and when I say college, I mean academic college, like the College of Engineering, the College of Health and Human Development, those types of colleges. Sometimes they have experience-based funds. So if you're doing an internship, maybe they have a specific scholarship for internships. So it might not be a general scholarship, but an experience-based scholarship, maybe for research, maybe for study abroad. So you want to check with your college if you're doing anything non-traditional this summer. I mentioned study abroad. There's also an office at Penn State outside of the academic colleges that supports students studying abroad. That's Penn State Global. And so you'll want to check out Penn State Global for study abroad scholarships if you're studying abroad. And then outside scholarships. If you're receiving sources from an outside provider, you should ask them if you're eligible for the summer. Whether you are or not, look for more. There are plenty of search engines out there. There's plenty of local resources for students to continue to try and get as many outside scholarships as you can. We have some resources on our website, studentaid.psu.edu, or you can go about it, the search on your own. But apply to as many outside scholarships as you can. So like I said, that was pretty info heavy. The review, federal Pell Grant consideration and awarding is automatic as long as you're in 6 or more credits and you've received it. If you have remaining loan eligibility that is not automatically offered, contact us. Additional applications are required for PLUS loans, private loans, the summer PA state grant, and additional scholarships. So the Pell Grant's really the only one that's going to be automatically offered, plus that grade level increase for most students if they're eligible. Most other things you want to contact us about or go out and submit those extra applications, making sure you're meeting those credit thresholds that I outline. So hopefully you've been taking notes. If not, you can rewind this or go back next week after this is posted on our website and watch it back to get those credit minimums. Before we move forward to some dates and calendars and other things you want to know, I do see a few questions that I want to clarify. Do the 6 credits all have to be at Penn State, or can 3 credits be at Penn State and 3 at a community college? And that's a great piece of clarification and a reason I want people to keep using the chat if they have questions like that. Everything I'm talking about, all the credits have to be at Penn State. If you're combining credits from Penn State and somewhere else, you have to be at 6 or more at Penn State to be eligible for those awards. If you're taking 6 or more credits at a community college or somewhere else and not taking any classes through Penn State, most likely you can apply for outside scholarships or a private loan. But most colleges, including Penn State, require you to be seeking a degree to be eligible for those federal aid sources. So if you're just taking 6 credits at a community college as a visiting student, you're not going to be eligible for those federal or state aid sources. If you're taking 3 credits at Penn State and 3 credits at a community college, you're under that 6 credit minimum, so you're not going to be eligible for those aid sources. If you're taking 6 credits at Penn State and 3 credits at a community college, you can use those aid sources at Penn State, but would still have to pay for those community college courses out of pocket. So that's a really great question. A question about the FAFSA forms. Is it too late to fill out? So like I mentioned, the 24-25 FAFSA, we encourage you to fill that out by April 15th for next year, for fall, spring, and next summer. So it's not too late to fill that one out. If you haven't used the 23-24 FAFSA, it's not too late to fill that out either. So if you were fortunate to not have to use any financial aid in the fall and spring semesters, but need aid for the summer, you can still fill out your 23-24 FAFSA. So great questions, everybody. I'll go ahead and keep things rolling so we have room for more questions at the end. Now, everything that I mentioned requires you to, just about everything I mentioned requires for you to be meeting satisfactory academic progress or other eligibility criteria. For satisfactory academic progress, we typically call it SAP. For all federal aid sources, that includes Pell Grant, direct subsidized unsubsidized loans, Parent Plus loans, federal work study, you have to be meeting SAP. We check this at the end of each semester, so there is a chance for some students, and why I put it in here, that you are eligible to receive the aid in the fall, spring, you're meeting the credit requirements for the summer, but you're not meeting these SAP requirements. And so I have to put this in here so that way everybody knows they have to be meeting this to get that federal aid. When we're talking about non-federal aid, those different lenders can set their own requirements. Sometimes folks like private loan providers will say, well, you have to be meeting their SAP policy. Other times they won't. And so when we're talking about federal aid, you have to review all of these. If we're talking about other aid sources, you want to check it specifically for what their requirements are. All right. If you have questions about these, let us know, put it in the chat. I can go into this in more detail. SAP is another area that I could do a whole presentation on. So you want to have that 2.0 cumulative GPA, 67% completion rate, meaning if you're late dropping a lot of classes, if you're withdrawing from semesters, those count as attempted but not completed courses. So that's what impacts that completion rate. Maximum time frame is if you're taking longer than normal credit-wise to complete your degree. Maybe your degree requires 120 credits and you're at 130, 140, 150 credits. That's eking up to that 150% time frame. So that's what that's about. All right, so I'm just going to outline the basic strategy here that I recommend based on what I've mentioned so far. First is determine that baseline cost. So what would it cost me to take my 3 credits at University Park? What would it cost me to take 3 credits at World Campus? What would it cost me to take 6 credits split between 2 campuses? That's what you can look up first via tuition.psu.edu. Then you want to estimate your aid eligibility going through the details that I just mentioned. So this is my baseline cost, this is my estimated financial aid, and this is my remaining cost. Is that cost enough for you to pay out of pocket? Do you need extra funds for that? And are you eligible for the loans that you could take out to cover that extra need, right? So maybe you're at 6 credits and there's a hefty additional cost, but you can take out the Federal Parent Plus loan. Is that something you're willing to do? Is that something your parents are willing to do? Are they eligible for it? Is there a remaining cost, but you're under 6 credits? That means you're maybe only eligible for those private loans. Is that something you can take on yourself? Is that something your parents are willing to help with? These are all things you want to consider before you start class. And you want to compare different scenarios. More aid doesn't always mean less expensive, right? So if you are a out-of-state student and you're at 3 credits, and you're listening to this presentation and say, oh, I want that federal Pell Grant, so I'm going to go up to 6 credits. Well, the amount you're receiving in federal Pell Grant dollars is great, and it's money that doesn't have to be paid back, but it's not going to equal the 3 extra credits cost. So that's why you need to determine those baseline costs first. More aid doesn't always mean less expensive. That's kind of a hard thing to grasp for some folks. So that's why you want to go through each of these 3 steps every time. Sometimes more aid does mean less expensive. Other times it doesn't. It depends on what the aid sources are and how much your baseline costs are going up. All right, let's go through and talk about some dates and calendar for the summer, because things work a little bit differently, right? In the fall and spring, you get billed at the beginning of the semester. All of your aid comes through. It's nice and simple. The same thing happens in January for the spring. It works pretty simply. But remember back when I mentioned there are those 4 different summer sessions. Billing begins in May, and the first billing due date is May 22nd, regardless of the summer session you're registered for. All right. So if you're enrolled in Maymester, you may be close to done with your classes before that billing due date. If you're registered for summer session 2, you may have to pay before your classes even begin. Another hard thing to conceptualize. You may have to pay before your classes begin. You may have to pay when your classes are almost over. It depends on which summer session you're registered for. Now, this next bullet point is worth a discussion. Federal aid disbursement and the disbursement for private loans is not until June 18th. All right, there's some federal policy that says we can't disperse federal aid until up to a week before classes begin. Because summer session 2 is the last time classes can begin, we have to wait until the time period before summer session 2 to disperse any federal aid, regardless of which summer session you're taking classes. All right, so similarly, you may finish classes before your aid even disperses. I'm going to talk about what to do in those situations. First thing to notice is if you have federal aid on your account, it will be listed as anticipated aid. So if you're just using aid to pay the bill, as long as the federal aid covers the bill, you should be okay. Many folks are reliant on refunds to pay for things like food, books, housing, those sorts of things. And so if you're not getting the disbursement until June, but you have to pay for things in the meantime, we have to talk about some strategies. So first, I want you to think, am I using aid to cover my whole balance? If your aid's not going to cover your whole balance, you don't really have to worry about this. You just need to make payments by the due date. If your aid is going to cover your whole balance, but you don't need a refund, you just want to make sure it's being listed as anticipated aid when that billing comes out in May. If you're expecting a refund, we're going to need to take some extra steps. So things to consider. I mentioned receiving the aid as a refund. There's an installment payment plan. And so if you need to pay out of pocket, you can sign up for the installment payment plan through the Bursar's office. There are 3 monthly payments in May, June, and July that you can sign up for to break up that payment. There's also something called an emergency short-term loan. And so if your classes begin in May and you need that aid to pay for your rent, but we're not going to disperse the aid until June 18th, contact us and ask about an emergency short-term loan. I'm not going to get into too many details about the process right now, but essentially, there's a process in which the university can lend you some money for a refund. Then when the aid source comes through, we pay ourselves back and then give you the rest of the refund. All right, it's complicated, it's convoluted. You only want to contact us if you need those loan funds to pay for non-billable expenses before June 18th. Okay? A few other things. There's a Pell Grant census date, and that's July 2nd this year. What that census date is we're required to tell the government all of the students that are registered for classes on July 2nd for Pell Grant eligibility. So there may be the case where you register for classes, say for summer session 1, you start attending those classes but late drop them. You were eligible for the Pell Grant before you late dropped them, but you dropped them before July 2nd. When the government asks us if you were enrolled in classes on July 2nd, we would have to say no. And so that might mean you don't get your aid. All right. Unlike in the fall, when that census date is the first week of September, you can drop your class in October or November and still be eligible for the aid. Because there are different summer sessions, that's not necessarily the case. So if you're thinking about late dropping a class, you don't need to get too in the weeds with these dates. If you're thinking about late dropping classes, look at the academic calendar link that I provided so you know when those deadlines are through the registrar's office and when you can drop them. And if you need to drop it, contact our office to ask how that would impact your aid. That's the main point. Check the academic calendar to see the deadline, contact our office to see how it would impact your aid. A few final thoughts before we get to question and answer. You want to think about housing costs. If you're a student, say living at University Park in an off-campus apartment, and you're paying rent over the summer, maybe taking classes at University Park is a good way to, I guess, get your value out of that rent. If you're not, maybe you can go home and live at home. If you're able to live at home with your parents, maybe you can save a couple months worth of rent by living at home and taking a class if you're from Pennsylvania through a more local campus or online. So housing costs, all we've talked about so far really was how to finance your summer classes, but many folks use loans or aid or pay out of pocket for those housing costs, which can be sometimes just as big a factor as the classes themselves. I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. More aid doesn't always equal less expenses. And so you want to go through that simulation strategy that I mentioned to see if the more classes you take is increasing the baseline cost and increasing your aid significantly. If it's just increasing your baseline cost, but your aid is going up in a small amount, you want to think about that. You can take courses closer to home. I mentioned that with the housing costs, and continue looking for scholarships. Even if it's after the summer semester starts, continue looking for scholarships. If you don't get any scholarships and are coming back next fall, continue looking for scholarships for next fall. All right. You want to just keep looking for any of those scholarships that you can find. Okay. So I know that's a whole lot of information. You might need to watch some of this back. You might need to review your notes. You might need to call our office. That's totally fine. You can contact us. Our website has an email form you could submit to ask a question. You can also call us during regular business hours. And we're happy to answer any questions with you. I don't expect any of you to know from my presentation exactly what your costs or aid will be. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to know those eligibility requirements, those credit minimums, to know that your aid options are limited, and to give you some strategies to forecast this with our assistance. All right. So contact us with any questions. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording and stay on for the next 12 minutes to answer any questions that might come through on the chat. So give me just a moment to settle in, and you're welcome to leave if you'd like or start posting in the chat. And for those of you watching on the recording, thank you very much.